The bell above the door rang, thin and tired, swallowed almost immediately by the roar of winter behind her. Snow burst in with her like an uninvited guest, sharp and biting, clinging to her boots. Her hair, her breath. She paused just inside the doorway, letting the door close slowly, as if shutting it too fast might steal what little warmth remained on her skin. Her arms tightened instinctively around her son. His body was lighter than it should have been, his small frame stiff with cold, a faint shiver running through him again and again like a silent cry. Her jacket was too thin for this kind of night. She could feel the cold seeping through the fabric, pressing against her ribs, her spine, settling deep in places warmth hadn't reached in days. She adjusted her grip, lifting him higher on her hip, feeling the dampness of snow melting into his clothes. His cheek rested against her collarbone, icy at first, then slowly warming. He didn't complain. That hurt more than if he had. She scanned the store quickly, eyes moving with the urgency of someone who knew time was not on her side. The lights were dimmer than usual, flickering slightly, casting long, tired shadows across half-empty shelves. The hum of the heaters was weak, struggling, like they might give up any moment. The smell of dust and old fabric mixed with cold air made her chest tighten. This place felt like it was already halfway closed, halfway forgotten. Her heart pounded as she took a few cautious steps forward. Every sound felt loud. The scuff of her boots, her son's uneven breathing, the distant ticking of a clock she couldn't see. She could feel eyes on her even before she found him. A man sat near the counter, hunched slightly over a laptop, coat still on, shoulders dusted with snow as if he hadn't been inside long. He looked out of place and yet somehow exactly where he belonged, like someone waiting for something he didn't yet understand. She lowered her gaze quickly, fear rising in her throat, fear of being judged, fear of being told to leave, fear of hearing the word closed before she could do what she came for. Her son stirred, fingers curling weakly into her jacket, and she whispered a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Just one more thing, she told herself. Just one blanket. Then we'll be okay. Inside, the cold didn't disappear the way she had hoped. It softened, but it stayed, clinging to the air like a warning. The store felt tired, worn down by too many quiet days and too few customers. Shelves stood half empty, metal racks showing where things used to be. Price tags hung crooked, some yellowed with age, others curling at the edges like they were ready to fall. The lights above buzzed faintly, flickering just enough to make everything feel uncertain, temporary. She took another step, then another, moving slowly as if the wrong sound might push the place into shutting down right in front of her. Her arms ached from holding her son, but she didn't shift him. Letting go even for a second felt dangerous. His head rested heavy against her shoulder, breath shallow, nose red from the cold. She brushed her cheek against his hair, silently counting his breaths, grounding herself in the simple proof that he was still warm, still here. The heaters along the walls whispered weakly, barely doing their job. Cold air crept along the floor, curling around her ankles, reminding her that outside was waiting, patient and merciless. She swallowed hard, fighting the familiar knot in her chest, the one that came every time survival felt like a negotiation instead of a right. Near the counter, the man sat at a small desk, the glow of his laptop cutting a sharp line across his face. His coat was still buttoned, dark and heavy, snow melting into the fabric and dripping slowly onto the floor. He looked up briefly, eyes lifting from the screen, scanning her the way people did when they tried not to stare but couldn't help it. Not curious, not kind, just assessing. It made her shoulders tense. She pretended not to notice and kept walking, eyes fixed ahead, focusing on the path between the shelves. Her pulse thudded in her ears, loud and uneven. She could feel herself shrinking under that look, becoming smaller, quieter, the way she had learned to be when money ran out and doors started closing. Still, she moved forward. Every step was a choice. Every step said she wasn't leaving yet. Not tonight. Not without something to keep her child warm. She reached the blanket rack and stopped, as if crossing some invisible line had drained what little strength she had left. Rows of folded fabric stared back at her, neat, quiet, untouched. Wool, fleece, cotton words, stitched into small labels that might as well have been written in another language. She shifted her son slightly, careful not to wake him fully, and reached out with trembling fingers. The fabric was warm beneath her touch, thicker than anything they owned. Her hand lingered longer than it should have, pressing into it, imagining it wrapped around his small body, the shivering finally easing. For a brief, dangerous moment, hope flickered. Then she saw the price. Her breath caught. Her fingers stiffened and slowly pulled back as if the blanket had burned her. The number sat there, calm and merciless, undoing that fragile hope in an instant. Her stomach dropped, heavy and hollow. She knew that number. She knew exactly how far out of reach it was. It was groceries for days. It was bus fare. It was everything she didn't have. Her son shifted against her chest, a soft whimper escaping him. She felt it vibrate through her bones. He nuzzled closer, instinctively searching for warmth she was running out of. She tightened her hold, pressing her cheek to his head, hiding the panic spreading across her face. Don't cry. Not here, not now. She glanced back toward the counter without meaning to. The man was still there, watching. His eyes lifted again from the screen, lingering longer this time. She could feel his gaze like a weight on her back, like he could see the calculation happening inside her. The mental math, the quiet defeat, the question of whether to walk out or beg. Her jaw tightened. She looked back at the blanket rack, swallowing hard. She told herself she didn't need pity. She told herself she could walk away, but her son's fingers curled weakly into her jacket, and the truth settled painfully clear in her chest. Walking away meant taking the cold with them. A flat, tired voice cut through the quiet. We're closing. It came from behind the counter, routine and emotionless, like it had been said 1,000 times already tonight. The words echoed louder than they should have, bouncing off the empty shelves and settling deep in her chest. Her body reacted before her mind did. She turned sharply, heart slamming against her ribs, eyes wide with sudden fear. Closing meant outside. Closing meant snow, wind, darkness, and nowhere warm to go. Closing meant holding her son tighter while the cold crept back into his bones. The room felt like it was shrinking, walls inching closer, air thinning. She looked down at her child. His eyelids fluttered open just enough to reveal dull, tired eyes. He shifted weakly, a small sound leaving his throat. Confused by the tension in her body, she brushed her lips against his temple, trying to steady herself, trying to borrow strength from him even though it should have been the other way around. Her feet moved before doubt could stop her. She hurried toward the desk, steps uneven, almost tripping over her own urgency. Every second felt stolen. She could hear the rustle of bags being packed, the subtle movements of a place preparing to shut its doors on her. Her throat tightened, words piling up inside her, tangled with fear and pride and desperation. As she approached, the man looked up again. This time he didn't return to his screen. His attention was fully on her now, brows slightly drawn, as if he sensed the storm she was carrying. She stopped a few feet away, breath shallow, hands gripping her son like an anchor. Her mouth opened, then closed. The silence stretched, heavy and humiliating. She felt heat rush to her face, tears threatening, and she hated herself for it. But the image of walking back into the snow crushed what little resistance she had left. She inhaled sharply, forcing the words out before courage could abandon her. Fear trembled in her voice, raw and exposed, as she took the final step closer. The words finally broke free, fragile but unstoppable. Please don't close the store. Her voice shook, barely louder than the heaters struggling along the walls. She hadn't meant for it to sound like a plea, but it was. Every syllable carried the weight of the night pressing in on her. She tightened her hold on her son as if bracing for impact, as if the word no might knock the air from her lungs. The man's expression didn't change right away, and the pause felt endless. In that space, doubt flooded her. Had she gone too far? Said too much? Exposed herself to someone who didn't care? Her heart raced as she swallowed, forcing herself to continue before he could turn away. My son needs one more blanket. The sentence cracked in the middle, her voice breaking on the word needs, like it held everything she couldn't say. She glanced down at her child, then back up, ashamed and desperate all at once. She didn't ask for charity. She asked for time, for warmth, for mercy. Her son stirred, sensing her distress. His fingers clutched weakly at her jacket, his small face tightening in discomfort. She felt his shiver run through her own body, a mirror of the cold she was trying so hard to fight. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Crying felt like surrender. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. She could hear her own breathing, uneven and fast. She waited for the dismissal, the polite apology, the rules he would surely cite. People always had reasons, policies, limits. She had learned not to argue with them. Still, she stood there unmoving, shoulders squared by sheer will. It took everything she had to stay upright, to meet his eyes instead of looking at the floor. This was her last chance tonight, and she knew it. The man rose from his chair slowly, the scrape of it against the floor cutting through the silence. The sound made her flinch. She instinctively pulled her son closer, bracing herself for rejection, for rules delivered in a calm voice that would still hurt all the same. His height made him seem larger now, more imposing, and for a brief moment she wondered if she should apologize, if she should turn and leave before being asked to. But he didn't speak. He just stood there studying them, his eyes no longer distant or distracted. They moved first to the boy's face, lingering on the faint bluish tinge of his fingers, the way his lips trembled even in sleep. Something shifted in the man's expression, subtle but unmistakable, like armor cracking. He took a step closer, then another. Each step made her pulse spike, unsure whether hope or disappointment was coming. She noticed details she hadn't before, the exhaustion lining his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hands curled and uncured at his sides, as if he were holding something back. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, steadier than hers, but not unkind. He asked no questions. He made no comments. Instead, he turned away from the desk, from the laptop still glowing with numbers and schedules, and walked toward the blanket rack. She stood frozen, watching him cross the store. Her mind raced, trying to understand what this meant, afraid to believe it. The cashier paused, confused, glancing between them. The heaters hummed on, the only sound filling the space as the man reached out and touched the blankets. He chose carefully, not the first one, not the cheapest one. He pulled out the thickest, softest blanket on the rack, holding it for a moment as if weighing its importance. Then he turned back toward her. The blanket draped over his arm, and for the first time since she entered the store, she felt the cold loosen its grip on her chest. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his breath slowed as he looked down at the child. For a moment, none of them spoke. The world outside felt very far away, like the storm had paused just to watch what would happen next. He bent slightly, lowering himself to her son's level, movements careful, deliberate. The boy stirred as the blanket unfolded, thick and heavy, carrying a warmth that felt almost unreal. When the fabric touched his skin, a small sound escaped him, not a cry, not a word, just a soft release, like his body finally letting go of something it had been holding too long. The man wrapped the blanket around him gently, tucking it in the way someone who had done this before would. Her breath hitched as she watched. She hadn't realized how tightly she had been holding herself together until that moment. Her hands shook as she adjusted the edge around her son's shoulders, afraid the warmth might disappear if she didn't protect it. The boy's fingers relaxed, unclenching from her jacket. His breathing deepened, steadier now, calmer. Color slowly returned to his face. She pressed her lips together, fighting the sob rising in her throat. This simple act felt bigger than help. It felt like rescue. The man straightened and pulled out his phone. His thumb moved quickly, decisively, his face set with quiet resolve. She caught fragments of words as he spoke softly. Orders canceled. Schedules changed, doors staying open. The cashier stared, stunned, unsure whether to speak or simply obey. She looked up at him then, really looked, confusion mixing with gratitude and disbelief. Whatever decision he had just made, she could feel it ripple outward, changing the air, changing everything. And for the first time that night, she allowed herself to believe they wouldn't be pushed back into the cold just yet. She stood there in silence, the weight of the blanket and the moment settling into her bones. The warmth wrapped around her son felt almost shocking, like something borrowed from another life. Her legs trembled, not from cold now, but from the sudden release of fear she had been holding back all night. She hugged him closer, breathing in the clean, soft scent of the fabric, grounding herself in the proof that this was real. The man ended the call and slid his phone back into his coat pocket. The store felt different now, brighter somehow, even though the lights hadn't changed. The cashier moved quietly behind the counter, reopening a register, the sound of it clicking on echoing like permission. Time for once was on her side. He finally spoke, his voice calm, almost gentle. He told her his name, then what he really did. He wasn't just a worker. He owned the stores. He had come in like this on purpose, wanting to see the truth without titles or distance. The words hit her slowly, one after another, until understanding bloomed wide in her chest. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Tears slipped down her face, silent and unstoppable, carrying exhaustion, gratitude, and disbelief all at once. She tried to speak, to thank him, but her voice failed her. She could only nod. clutching her son as if he were the center of the world, because he was. Outside, the snow kept falling, relentless and cold, tapping softly against the windows. But inside, the doors stayed open. The heat held and hope, fragile but alive, settled between them. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel invisible. And for the first time in a long time, she believed they would be okay.